It was a quiet Saturday morning in Geylang Bahru, Singapore. The sun had barely risen, hawkers were opening their stalls, and the birds filled the air with the usual chorus that marked the beginning of another ordinary day. People walked past Block 58, the modest HDB flats where working-class families lived their simple lives. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, nothing to suggest that within one of those apartments, an unspeakable nightmare had already unfolded, silently, mercilessly, leaving behind only horror and questions that have never been answered. Inside that flat, 4 young siblings lay dead, their small bodies brutally stabbed, their lives cut short before they could even step fully into the world. Their names were Tan Kok Peng, age 10, Tan Kok Hin, 8, Tan Kok Soon, 6, and little Tan Chin Ni, just 5 years old. For their parents, that January day in 1979 would be remembered forever as the morning when their entire world collapsed. For Singapore, it would become one of the most haunting, unsolved cases in its history. The Tan family seemed unremarkable to neighbors. The father, Tan Chun Chai, was 36 years old and drove a small bus for a living. His wife, Lee Mei Ying, 32, worked as a bus conductor. They lived a modest life, raising their 4 children in a cramped but warm apartment, like thousands of other working-class families in the city. They were not wealthy, they were not influential, they kept to themselves and blended into the neighborhood. The eldest child, Kok Peng, was a responsible boy already carrying the weight of being the big brother, preparing to take on the demanding world of Singapore's schools. Kok Hin was mischievous and clever, always chasing after his siblings, full of energy. Kok Soon was only 6, eager to follow his brothers everywhere, and the youngest, Chin Ni, was preparing with excitement for her very first day of kindergarten, her small school bag already packed and waiting by the door. That morning, like every morning, the family followed their routine. At 6:35 a.m., the parents left for their bus shift. They kissed their children goodbye, certain that they would see them again in just a few hours. Singapore in the late 70s prided itself on safety and order. Parents often left children at home without worry. Crime existed, but the idea that someone would enter a flat in daylight and kill 4 children was unimaginable. Yet between 6:35 and 7:30 a.m., someone did exactly that. When the parents left, the iron gate to the flat was left unlocked. Perhaps it was routine. Perhaps the killer knew their habits, knew exactly when to strike. Around 7:10 a.m., Mei Ying called home to check on the children. No one answered. She thought little of it at first. Maybe they were still asleep or busy playing, but the silence lingered in her mind. Later that morning, a neighbor knocked on their door. Again, no answer. By 10 a.m., when the parents returned from their shift, the Yi building was quiet. They stepped into their apartment. Shoes were neatly lined up, school bags untouched. For a moment, everything looked normal. And then Mei Ying walked toward the bathroom. What she saw would haunt her for the rest of her life. Her 4 children lay on the tiles of the bathroom floor, their bodies stacked together as if placed deliberately. Their small forms were covered in dozens of stab wounds. Blood stained the floor, smeared across their clothes, splashed against the walls. Even seasoned detectives who would later enter the flat described it as one of the most horrifying crime scenes they had ever witnessed. Mei Ying collapsed in screams so piercing that neighbors rushed to the door. When her husband saw the bodies, he fell to the ground, clutching his head, unable to comprehend the horror before him. The autopsy confirmed the unimaginable cruelty of the attack. Each child had suffered more than 20 stab wounds. 2 weapons had been used, a kitchen knife and a cleaver, both common household tools. Kok Peng, the eldest, had fought the hardest. His right arm was nearly severed, and in his small hand, he still clutched strands of human hair. Proof he had resisted with everything he had. His younger siblings had little chance. 6-year-old Kok Soon bore multiple deep wounds. 8-year-old Kok Hin was stabbed repeatedly in the chest and abdomen. The youngest 5-year-old Chin Ni was still holding her pillow when she was found, suggesting she had been dragged from her bed mid-sleep, clinging to the last comfort she had. The bathroom told its own story. Blood trails showed the children had been attacked in different parts of the flat and then dragged one by one into the bathroom. It was as if the killer wanted them found together, their bodies arranged in a grotesque tableau. In the kitchen sink, investigators found diluted blood mixed with water, suggesting that the killer had calmly washed their hands or rinsed the weapons before leaving. There were no signs of forced entry. There were no valuables missing. Savings, jewelry, and money were left untouched. This was not a robbery. This was deliberate, calculated slaughter. The Criminal Investigation Department of Singapore launched a massive operation. Dozens of officers were assigned, and the entire neighborhood was questioned. Neighbors, colleagues, relatives, all were interrogated. Investigators searched for a motive. Was it a burglary gone wrong? No valuables had been taken. Was it revenge? But the Tans had no known enemies. Could it have been related to money lending or disputes in Mei Ying's mutual aid society? Some suggested it. Others pointed to an attempted burglary that had taken place months earlier. Every possibility was explored. None produced answers. Then a taxi driver came forward with a lead. He reported that at around 8 a.m. that morning, he had picked up a young Malaysian man. The passenger seemed nervous. Blood was visible on his clothing, and he appeared to be hiding a knife. The driver recalled his address. He lived nearby, in the same neighborhood as the Tans. The children knew him well enough to call him Uncle. The timeline fit perfectly. Investigators seized on the lead, questioning the man for 2 weeks. But without fingerprints, without conclusive forensic evidence, without witnesses who had seen him enter the flat, the case collapsed. The man returned to Malaysia, and the trail went cold. As if the family's suffering was not already unbearable, weeks later another blow came. A New Year greeting card arrived at the Tan household. Inside, written in Chinese characters, was a message so cruel that even hardened officers shuddered when they read it. "Your family line has been cut off. Ha ha ha." The phrase "cut off the line" suggested that the writer knew something intimate. Mei Ying had undergone sterilization after having 4 children. Could the killer have known? Was this a taunt meant to deepen their grief? Or was it a random, cruel phrase? The card was never traced. It remains one of the most chilling, unanswered pieces of the case. For the parents, life after the murders was unbearable. They continued to live in the same flat. Neighbors described haunting scenes at mealtimes, 4 extra bowls placed on the table, as if the children were still there. It was their ritual of grief, their way of acknowledging the children's presence even in death. At night, Mei Ying was seen sitting for hours in the children's empty bedroom, whispering their names, speaking softly into the silence. Her husband, once known as cheerful, grew silent and withdrawn. They never had more children. They never moved away. They chose to live in the same apartment, surrounded by the ghosts of what had been taken from them. The community around Block 58 changed after that morning. Fear replaced the sense of safety. Parents locked doors. Children were no longer left alone. People whispered about the murders for years. Some avoided walking past the flat. Others claimed they could hear children's cries in the stairwell at night. Singapore, a country proud of its efficiency and safety, was shaken to its core. Here was a crime so brutal, so senseless, and so unresolved that it seemed to defy the very idea of order. Over the decades, theories have circulated. Some believe it was a jealous neighbor, angry over noise or resentful of the family's closeness. Others insist it was revenge for debts unpaid. Some suggest the killer was an acquaintance of Mei Ying from her social circles, someone with a grudge. But the strongest lead remains the Malaysian suspect seen by the taxi driver. He matched the timeline. He matched the proximity. He was known to the children. Yet without forensic proof, he was never charged. Retired officers admit frustration. They believe the killer was someone the children trusted, someone they would open the door to without hesitation. But with each passing year, the possibility of uncovering the truth grows dimmer. The case remains one of Singapore's most infamous unsolved murders. Newspapers of the time covered every angle. Rumors spread. Decades later, true crime enthusiasts still revisit it, hoping that new forensic methods could bring clarity. But the reality is stark. The killer may have died, taking the secret to the grave. What makes the case so haunting is not only the brutality, but the silence that followed. 4 innocent children slaughtered. No motive, no arrest, no justice. Only grief and unanswered questions. For Singaporeans who lived through that time, the words Tan family tragedy still send chills down the spine. The children of Block 58 remain frozen in memory, their lives cut short, their futures stolen, their parents condemned to live in grief, and the rest of Singapore left with the unsettling truth that sometimes, even in the safest of societies, evil can strike without reason, without warning, and without ever being explained. So what do you think? If you had been living next door that morning, could anything have been noticed? Any sound, any movement that might have saved them? Share your thoughts below. I'll be reading them all. And if this story shook you as much as it shook me, don't forget to subscribe to Crimnest, where every week we uncover the darkest, most haunting true crime stories from across Asia and beyond. Until next time, stay safe.